a blessing and privilege to be here amongst you guys today. I want to thank Jim Russo for inviting me here. I have the pleasure of reading them at the Soquel Community Series. I see a lot of the Soquel reading series still here, so I feel like I'm at home actually. And I want to thank my good friends Manuel and Pepe for being here with me tonight, this afternoon here. I'm going to begin with a quote here from the Frenchman Michel de Montaigne. We are born to grow old, to grow weak, to be sick, in spite of all medicine. This is the first lesson that the Mexicans give their children, when as soon as they come out of the mother's womb, they greet them thus: child, you have come into this world to endure. So with that, I'm going to begin here. This one's called The Cobblestone Roads Speak. And as a history major, obviously I had enough time to really study a lot of the different cultures, and had the opportunity to be in Puerto Rico a few years ago and walk over the cobblestone roads in Old San Juan, and just memories come to you. The cobblestone roads speak. I walked over cobblestone roads in Puerto Rico to feel the connection of the many who have passed through La Isla del Encanto. In one step, I felt the Negro who had been brought via ship to harvest the riches of the Spanish. He pleaded for a drum so he could sing the deep despair that was growing within. In another step, the Taino Indian explained how he felt impoverished at having lost his lands. He wailed as he lived and did not live in the homeland. He told me that he sympathized with the 19th century indigenous natives of the United States. In another step, I heard a Spaniard curse his fellow compatriot for elevating him to a privileged position solely because of his pigmentation. His first-hand account of the bloody whippings upon the slaves filled him with righteous indignation. At night, he rocked himself to sleep as he recited the 5th chapter of the book of Matthew. In another step, I felt the Santera who was harassed and demonized for wanting to maintain her African traditions. The carrying out of her cultural rituals, she felt, was of no concern to the Spanish views of what was right or wrong. She explained that she harmed no human as she made communion with the divine. In another step, I heard the elocution of a mother who had to be mother and father because her husband drowned himself in the cantinas of yesterday. When she pointed at him as he walked down the street, she explained that it was him and it was not him at the same time. She lowered her head toward her shoulder to hide the pain that was searing her soul. She let out a sob that moved every cell that I possessed. My sons, she uttered in anguish. Sadly, her sons copied the very actions of their father. This next one's called the Hummingbird. And you all know hummingbirds are solitary animals and species, but they're so magical. Many, many years ago, people speak of a hummingbird who lived on a desolate island. After flying over the island with his brothers and mother, he decided to land to admire it with its beautiful and breathtaking rose bushes. When he desired to reunite himself with his family, he could no longer see or smell their scent. He sang toward the four winds with the hope that his desires would be heard by his blood. Unfortunately, his hopes and desires were never fulfilled. Each day, and even throughout the nights, he forced his eyes to search for a being that resembled himself. So much did he force himself that his two lamps, little by little, began losing their light, until at last his world became a dark room with ubiquitous sound all around. He sang and sang without end. More beautiful but melancholic melodies never had there been heard before. The hummingbird sang so much day and night that his sweet voice also slowly left him. It remains the greatest of mysteries how he was able to acquire food thereafter. He spent the rest of his days moving his head from side to side on a branch next to a yellow rose bush,
trying to decipher the sounds of the waves. His curiosity and perseverance, given his tragedies, never gave in to the world. You gotta keep fighting, rage against the dying of the light.
Right. This next one's called Deplorable Invalid. I wrote this when I was in Acapulco. And sometimes we do regret when we don't do the right thing. And that's kind of the premise of the Deplorable Invalid.
In my youth, I denied alms to an invalid who walked like a turtle due to a congenital infirmity. His appearance was deplorable. He begged me to help him with any spare change. I looked at him, an act that seemed to last 40 years. Afterwards, I denied him any assistance and left, too preoccupied with what people might think of our communication. Today, I am old and gray-haired. Each night, before I go to bed, I remember this poor invalid. Silently, I remember my short-sighted virtue and sigh, a regrettable sigh.
This next one's called The Flower of My Garden. Flowers are beautiful. Nature is beautiful.
Death arrived at our doorstep and announced that it had come for you, the only sweet flower in my garden. I implored death, no, please, take me. She does not have an understanding of life's contract. She is simple-minded. I have been for many years waiting for you. I have my suitcases packed. Please, take me. With one stroke of its sleeve, death pushed me aside and took the being who most helped numb the pain of existence. I live today without speaking. All of my days begin with the crepuscule.
The Flower of My Garden. This next one's called, well, I'll recite one here. Every now and then I'm surprised that at my advanced stage I can still memorize some. I guess it's all perspective too. It's called The Butterfly. And you know, butterflies don't live too long, right? Some live 2 weeks, some live at the most 8 months. So the tragic and heroic nature's there.
I've always flown just like a butterfly. I glide in air to my soul's delight. The multicolors that my wings do show, they cover scars buried deep within this poet's soul. In sunny days, I search for you. I ask for guidance with each passing moon. But if one day my colors fade, do not remove the magic of this lovely day. When it is time, and I must part, a final glance at the gleaming sun before the dark. The butterfly, I am the soaring butterfly.
This next one's called In the Heights of Taxco. I had the privilege, and I think you've been to Taxco before too, right? Yes. Yeah. I've read this here, and Taxco's in the state of Guerrero, and this, right, the theme of this is the beauty of literature in everyday life. It helps and sustain us sometimes. And you all know who Don Quixote de la Mancha is.
In the heights of Taxco, next to La Catedral de Santa Prisa, I encountered the famed Don Quixote de la Mancha. In quick fashion, he attacked me with an indignant look and sharp words. I explained to him that he was just a fictional character. That he never truly existed. He seemed bothered by this utterance, and he positioned himself atop a wooden board and dictated the sacred law of the knight errant. I understand. I tried to appease him. I just came to admire the beautiful silver mining town of Taxco and to awaken my legs in the steep climbs through these streets. Look, sir, I have been prisoner in North Africa and now here in the state of Guerrero, in Mexico. You shall know that no one is stronger and more perseverant than this public servant. I warn you, for your own safety, move out of my way. Don Quixote sounded off. He continued explaining and dictating while I bargained at the bazaar. that was next to the cathedral, so I could get the best price. Afterward, I took the statue of Don Quixote and placed him in my backpack. He will bring good character to my classroom, I told myself. Don Quixote has not directed a speech toward me since that day.
Literature, right? It sustains, it does. This next one is called It Is As If. And many things are if something, right? So that's kind of a
It is as if you existed and did not exist at the same time. The paradox of running wild still. It is as if you flew to me at dawn, showed me the eternal garden, and disappeared as I stopped to take in the view. It is as if I live in two worlds, one dominated by commerce and the other by your unwavering silhouette. It is as if my blood beats only to understand that life is one cycle of many, many to come. It is as if all my prior existence has been a building up to this precise and exact moment. It is as if the multitude of the human species only seek to be accepted to the great dining hall, and so they pathologically struggle to get there, unconcerned for those who stay and decide to dine at the poet's table. A table which is never allowed admittance for their audacity and parrhesia, frank speech. Society has been like this for eternities. It is as if most of my workday has belonged to logic, so the entrance of pathos is a balance that I logically understand. It is as if the centuries have remained completely the same. Some say there's been more violence, more adultery, more delinquency, more insincerity. I respond, there's just been more media, you see. It is as if my life belongs only to me, yet all have the first say in it. I sit back and hear the trials of my fellow man. It is well that they release them with me. Peace is a blank slate. It is as if. This next one is what they call the tragic comic. If you're familiar with the tragic comic, you'll soon read. It's called Will You Walk With Me to the End? Will you walk with me to the end? I ask passionately and with all the love I can muster to my love. She answered sharply and without hesitation, stop being obnoxious and talking nonsense. I laughed, gathered my senses, and started a conversation which she was engrossed in on the widening of Miller Street. Told you that's the truth. This next one is for those that have philosophic proclivities. It's called A Mad World. I have a PhD in philosophy from Harvard and 10 honorary degrees for my work on metaphysics, exclaimed the man to his fellow companions. I have revealed to many the life outside the horrid dark cave. I have, through my work, spoken to Socrates, Plato, Kierkegaard, and Montaigne, to name a few. Then he pointed toward the heavens and continued. I have explained the evasive categorical imperative, truth tables, dichotomies, and all fallacious comments uttered in newspapers by conservatives and liberals alike. Finally, he exclaimed, and because you have no interest and do not value my wisdom, I say you are all mad, and the future looks wretchedly sour. Just then, 3 men in white grabbed him without concern to his person, led him to his assigned room, and administered his medication. His disease was of the most unfortunate. He did not understand the rules. The line between genius and you guys get it. This next one, in 2 days' time, 48 hours from now, I'll have the pleasure of being in Cartagena de Indias and in Barranquilla. So I'll be in Colombia. And I have a really small piece. It's called Barranquilla. It's on page 7. I pine to be in the beaches of Barranquilla, dreaming with opened eyes. There I shall lay down, and in my daydreaming, I shall become young again. The fountain of youth. And this next one, as a history major, obviously, I studied this a little bit in depthly. We all know that the Chinese were excluded in 1882. The Chinese Exclusion Act pushed a lot of Chinese down into country underneath the United States, which is Mexico. And that's kind of the premise of this particular poem. The exclusion of the Chinese to Mexico. I was taking in some sun on the coastal beach of Acapulco, under the Puerta del Cielo, when an elderly Chinese woman arrived to this end of the Pacific Ocean's blanket, rowing on a rubber inner tube. The wrinkles on her face testified to her extended residence and her trials on earth. She shouted toward me as she attempted to get off of her self-made boat. "Can you direct me toward my great-great-grandchildren, dear sir?" With great confusion, I asked her, "Ma'am, are you telling me that you have lived to see your great-great-grandchildren?" "Well, yes. I promised to wait for them since their first letter. As youngsters, they were working to build a railroad in the United States." "But why did you come looking for them here in Mexico?" I asked with a bemused look. "Well, sir, I just got wind that the Americans sent them here some time ago. And well, I learned Spanish just in case upon my arrival I saw that they had forgotten their native language. I must be able to communicate with them, you see." I gave her my hand to assist her off of her dilapidated inner tube. I sent the nearby waiter to give her a warm meal. Afterwards, I gave her some monetary assistance so that she could travel to Baja California and Sonora to unite herself with her posterity. And if you've ever traveled in Mexico, you'll see people that have characteristics, Chinese characteristics and so forth. They may do their happy there. This next one's called Bothered Mulata, and the theme is basically biracial angst in modern society.
I guess I should have made an announcement.
The bothered mulata.
I turned it off, but
And you all know that mulata, right? It's a mixture of different stuff. Along the principal avenida of La Costera Miguel Alemán in Acapulco, I saw a mulata who was quite agitated as she was a first-hand witness to a verbal fight between a black girl and a white girl. The black girl pummeled the white girl for shining bright with her turquoise eyes that looked like the Caribbean waters of Playa del Carmen. "That's all the men always focus on," she informed the white girl. The white girl rained blows of distrust upon the black girl for her full hips and skinny waist that no doubt cost a lot of false loves who sold illusions so they could reach their ends. The white girl continued, "I am never fully accepted at gatherings by the dominant culture." After this verbal onslaught, the mulata moved her face away from the shopping glass window where her face had been casting a reflection. And this next one, last two are really quick ones here. The Nuyorican Poets Café, the Lower East Side of Manhattan. The Nuyorican Poets Café. I wait in line. A positive white teenager is rehearsing his melodic and rhythmic alchemy, which he will unleash on the legendary stage. He's a Long Island brother, who within his part-time job of making gelato ice creams, prepares a social dessert of his poetic hip-hop mind. He tells me he's ready to feel the explosions of butterflies when he hears his name announced. He excuses himself, puts on his headset and begins rapping his poetry and moving his hands from side to side. That's art, absolutely. I wait in line. An African-Americano Dominicano in his early 30s speaks to me about justice. It is evident that he has seen and experienced the opposite. He tells me that DR is calling his name. He tells me that as a literature major, Dostoevsky and Tolstoy did intrigue him. But he tells me that Los Hermanos Karamazov and Ana Karenina have now moved into the background. And now La República Dominicana steps in to break bread with him in their long-awaited supper. I wait in line. and a lovely gal from Cali, Colombia, introduces herself. Her presence and vocalizations break down the doors of an aging spirit. Her many goals and attainable idealisms are a breath of fresh air to me. She tells me she lives in Queens, and I inform her that clearly she is the jewel of that city. I wait in line no longer as the doors open. The poets walk in single line formation, each one an expert in himself or herself. The duende waits in front of the stage, looking to see who he will take hold of. Tonight, you all know what duende is? Duende is that magical power. If the muse comes from the outside in, duende comes from the palms of the feet out. It's that one thing that connects performer, the audience, the bull and the bullfighter, the flamenco dancers. We sometimes call it magic. Thank you all for having me here. I really appreciate it.